Good Morning Liberty.
Well, what is up, all of our liberty-loving friends? This is another fantastic episode of Good Morning Liberty. My name is Nate Thurston. Across from me is an empty chair where sometimes sits Mr. Charles Chuck Thompson. He is not here today. It's just me hanging out with the Fed Haters Club right now. We've been hanging out, talking a little bit, and we're going to do it. We're going to do it anyway. I try not to do shows by myself anymore because I just don't like them. So if it's your first time listening to the show right now, today, just keep in mind that this is not normally the format. Normally it's me and Charlie, who I've been friends with for about 25 years now, something like that. And a completely different thing than what we're doing right now. But make sure you do tell a friend, the family member, and the children to subscribe to Good Morning Liberty, where we do life, liberty, and the pursuit of meaning every single day of the week when we want to. I did skip yesterday because also Charlie wasn't here. Put out a great interview from new guy Josh, as we call him. So go back and listen to that interview from Josh. So, got a few things here. Number one on the list, we have had now 100 days of Donald Trump. 100 days of Trump as our president. And what I asked the group right before I started, I said, I need some input. And so if you haven't done it yet, let me know good things, bad things from Trump so far in the first 100 days. I'm trying to scroll through right here. Yeah, as libertarians, good thing. Ross Ulbricht has been freed. That's good. We're all very happy about that. Let's see, bad thing. Let's see, Department of Education, the Fed, ATF are still alive and well now. He did do that executive order where they're going to dismantle the Department of Education. But of course, as we've talked about several times, they essentially took all the stuff that the Department of Education does, almost all of it, and just shuffled it over to other agencies where they're still going to be doing a lot of things that we don't like. It's just not going to be called the Department of Education. In Trump's defense on that one, what we have found out in these first 100 days is that a president apparently can't just come in and destroy these executive agencies. We saw that with like an agency like USAID, that they had to shift over to the State Department and then essentially dismantle under that. You know, as libertarians, we've been talking for a long time. Every time we have this great libertarian presidential candidate, someone running for office, they're going to come in and they're going to get rid of this agency and that agency, and in the Fed and in the IRS and in the ATF and the FBI, and they're, just the whole list. I could list off 300 or 400 agencies for you right now. As we found out, unfortunately, you can't just do that, I guess, which is unfortunate. It's sort of weird given the fact that these are agencies under the executive branch, but these are just ways that Congress has given away their authority over to the executive branch, but the executive branch apparently is forced to exercise that authority, even if sometimes they don't want to. So that sucks. Let's see. Good thing here, Gulf of America, there from Bailey. Finally. I'm interested I'm going to maybe go down to Destin or something like that. We'll see this summer if my wife wants to go see the ocean again, make sure it's still there. And I'll see if any signs have been changed or anything, or if maybe I can take some pictures of signs that still say Gulf of Mexico or something. I'm not sure if that has happened yet. One of our biggest things that we liked so much from the beginning of this administration was Doge. That was one of the reasons that I made the decision to go ahead and vote for Trump was Doge and Elon Musk. And of course, we got a guy out there that's constantly posting Milton Friedman videos and Ayn Rand quotes and stuff like that. And all of a sudden, he's going to run a department in the government whose job it is to downsize the government. And that sounded pretty awesome. And I think they went in there really with the best of intentions. And what we found again was that This system is essentially set up to prevent itself from being destroyed. And I mean that in a bad way. Some people might hear that and be like, yeah, it's meant to destroy these tyrants, meant to stop these tyrants from coming in and destroying parts of the government that they don't like. No, I mean, it has set up a self-defense mechanism where it can grab more and more power and take more and more of your money. And it's fairly easy for that to happen and for it to continue to keep growing year after year. But it's very, very hard to move in the opposite direction. And that's really what we found with Doge. From everything to offering buyouts for federal employees, getting rid of agencies, even trying to get in there and look at the books or look at the systems. They hit roadblock after roadblock the entire time, and that was super frustrating. And, I don't want to exactly knock them for not getting as much done as they thought they were going to get done. I think they didn't plan on encountering as much resistance. I think there's been over 300 lawsuits filed in the first 100 days of Trump's presidency. And, of course, a lot of orders from federal judges blocking a bunch of these actions. And that's not good. Trump had said that he was going to end the Russia-Ukraine war on his first day. That was a bit of a that was a bit of a letdown. That war is still going on right now. In fact, it's heating up a little bit. I will say that he is at least trying to negotiate a ceasefire and to negotiate an end to the war, not just immediately giving them as much money as possible and not thinking about an off-ramp unless Ukraine gets 100% of their territory, including Crimea, so all the way back to 2014 borders. We're working towards that right now, but it definitely was not done in the first day, and it was not done in the first 100 days at all. I'm going to scroll down through here. Epstein files. We've not gotten those Epstein files yet. We don't have the list. Now, I don't know what the list is going to look like. We've got flight logs and stuff like that. Can you guys imagine, though? I mean, we know that there's videos of what was going on that island, and they were seized by the government. And I just got a feeling we're just not going to see those things. Isn't that wild? And they've got video evidence of these things happening. They're like, oh, yeah, we're not going to show that to you. I guess we got some JFK files. Didn't really see anything change from that during that time. What else did we have? Let me scroll down through here. Anyone else? Anyone else here? Good things, bad things from Trump in the first 100 days? How about a bad thing being this crazy tariff war that we have going on right now? I think that this maybe could have been conducted a little bit better. I don't know if enacting a tariff war on the entire world was the best thing to do. I think it runs the risk of actually pushing other countries to go towards China, because while you might have a specific feeling on trade imbalances and wanting to bring all these factories back and all that, a bunch of other countries around the world might not feel the same way. They might still want to be buying all those cheap goods from China, and we could actually end up alienating ourselves from the rest of the world, and that could be a bad thing. I'm not a fan. It's a tax on people, and it's going to end up raising prices for a lot of people. And in fact, that's going to lead us into the first story, which happened yesterday concerning Amazon, where Amazon, the story was that they were going to start showing the cost of the tariffs when you purchased a product on Amazon. Now, that ended up not exactly being the case. Amazon has a Temu, or Temu, I guess is how you technically say it, Temu competitor for like super, super cheap single-use China goods, like crazy cheap products that might work one time, if you're lucky. If it's a piece of clothing, just don't wash it. It's good. Just wear it a couple times. It'll be fine. I think I bought 5 things in one order on Temu, and I threw away 3 of them immediately. I didn't do anything with them at all. And one product I still use, which is a hoodie. It was fine. It's a fine hoodie to wear around the house, nowhere else. I don't want it to get messed up. Yeah, anyhow, those kind of goods. And that's where they were going to be showing the tariff pricing. Why? Because Temu was doing that. And so I think they were trying to compete with them. But the story that was going around yesterday was that Amazon was going to start showing that. And I guess, no, I didn't really have that lined up, but let's go into the Amazon story. So Amazon to display tariff costs for consumers. That was the story. Everyone was very upset. And by everyone, I mean the MAGA influencers on X. They were very upset. Trump, the press secretary, people in the government, very upset. And I'm going to show you some of the reactions that we had. And I'm going to tell you why I think this is absolutely ridiculous and will definitely be in Dumb Bleep of the Week. Because, man, is it dumb. Here is the reaction in the press conference.
This morning that Amazon will soon display a little number next to the price of each product that shows how much the Trump tariffs are adding to the cost of each product. So isn't that a perfect crystal clear demonstration that it's the American consumer and not China who is going to have to pay for these policies?
I will take this since I just got off the phone with the president about Amazon's announcement. This is a hostile and political act by Amazon. Why didn't Amazon do this when the Biden administration hiked inflation to the highest level in 40 years? And I would also add that it's not a surprise because, as Reuters recently wrote, Amazon has partnered with a Chinese propaganda arm. So this is another reason why Americans should buy American. It's another reason why we are onshoring critical supply chains here at home to shore up our own critical supply chain and boost our own manufacturing here.
So this is a hostile and political act that we have. And now just imagine this for a second before we even get into it. Amazon was going to show the impact of the tariff. Now, who collects that tariff? It's Amazon who collects that tariff because you're purchasing from a Chinese manufacturer, a Chinese company, depending on what good it is that you're getting. And so should they show the price with the tariff included on their website for each one of these items? Or should they show the price that the seller is selling the product for, then show you what the tax is that they have to collect on top of that? Sounds an awful lot like sales taxes to me, because it essentially is a sales tax. But the idea that this is a hostile and political act, what they're upset about here is that people are truly going to see the effects of the tariffs, which is wild to me because so many people will argue, well, these tariffs are good. This is pro-America. This is a good thing. And if they're so good, why wouldn't you just show what the actual price of the tariffs are? Say, yeah, that is the price for buying one of these crappy products from slave driver China over there. You should buy American. But instead, they're still doing this thing where they don't want people to see how this actually works, because you see, this goes exactly against the way that they marketed this to so many people, which is that China pays the tax. Well, that's pretty hard to argue when you have a line item on your bill of you paying the tax, which is essentially what's happening. So that's why they got so mad about it. Now, it turned out to be the case that it wasn't really for Amazon.com. It was for this other cheap Temu competitors where they were starting this, and maybe they were going to move it on out to Amazon. But apparently Trump called Jeff Bezos, who is not the CEO of Amazon, Trump called Jeff Bezos, and they worked it out, and they just squashed that idea right off the bat. I still think that this is a ridiculous thing for people to get upset about. Here's some of the examples of reactions. This guy, Charles Payne: I wonder if Amazon will also explain to the American public why its profit margin must increase every single year and how much Jeff Bezos' $500 million wedding will cost each customer. They are playing a dangerous political game. Now, this is a right-wing guy who is now calling out Amazon's profit margins and the fact that Jeff Bezos is going to have a $500 million wedding, apparently. This is the first I'm hearing about this, but if you're up on people's weddings and how much they cost, I guess that's what you got to show. And so now we're supposed to be mad that Amazon's profit margin is seemingly increasing every year, except for a whole post out charts that show them having a negative profit margin. Many of the quarters that are posted on this chart, including after the COVID pandemic and all that stuff, and them going down to negative net profit margins. And but why would I be upset about that? So then the idea is, well, we should increase this tax. This business should pay this tax, and the business should eat the cost of that tax. We're starting to sound a lot like Bernie Sanders here, Robert Reich. Like, yeah, we should tax these corporations, do income taxes on the corporations, more fees and regulations, all that, and they should just eat all that and stop worrying about their profit margin going up so much every single year. That's ridiculous. That's just them trying to have $500 million weddings for the guy who owns the company. It just sounds like something that people on the, not just the left, but the crazy left, the radical left, the leftist, the socialist leftist, the arguments that they would be making. Breitbart comes out after this story right here. Says Amazon sides with China in trade war. So there's a tax that you have to collect every time someone buys something from a foreign country, and you put that as a line item when someone goes to buy that product, and that means you're siding with China. If you don't either eat the cost of that tax, which is 145%, if you don't eat the cost of that tax, or if you don't just change the price on the website to whatever the price is plus that tax, well, then you're siding with China in the trade war. You're siding with China by showing Americans how tariffs actually work. That means you're siding with China. To not side with China, to side with America and to side with Trump, you would lie to your customers about how tariffs are actually collected and what the true cost of the tariffs actually are. Laura Loomer says, Jeff Bezos is proof you can't trust the tech oligarchs. Now we're using the oligarch term. They are snakes. They only told Trump what he wanted to hear when he won. How about we cut Bezos's government contracts in the Pentagon if he wants to play cutesy with Trump on Amazon? So if Amazon shows their customers what the cost of a tax is that they have to collect as a line item on their bill, then we should make sure the Pentagon doesn't use Blue Origin for anything, or NASA doesn't use Blue Origin for anything, just to get at Jeff Bezos. They just go leftist all of a sudden when it comes to the tariffs. It's just absolutely wild to me. Now, I did a test run here earlier, and I went to go buy something on Amazon, which I do way too much. I order a lot of stuff. I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon. And what I noticed here is, of course, shipping and handling. There's a line item. If you're just listening right now, it's a button that says place your order, and my item is $53.29. Shipping and handling is $0. Look at that free shipping and handling. Of course, I pay yearly for Amazon Prime, so it's not really $0. And then it says estimated tax to be collected is $5.20. Yes, that's because I'm here in Tennessee, and where I live, the sales tax, I believe, is around 9.5%. We don't have state income taxes. It's one of the trade-offs, okay? Property taxes are actually fairly low, and we don't have state income taxes. We have a 9.5% sales tax, and I'm just fine with, by just fine. Whew. In comparison, I am fine with that if I were to consider which one of those taxes I would rather pay. It is a sales tax. The answer is I would not like to pay any of them, but we don't have to get into that today. This is a Libertarian podcast, just in case I haven't mentioned that yet today, but Libertarian podcast. Taxation is theft, just so you know. But look at these guys here showing me what that tax is that's going to be collected. You see, what happens is when I buy something on Amazon, there is a tax that the government puts on top of that Amazon has to then collect on behalf of the government. Isn't that weird? And they show me what that is. And so my order total ends up being $58.49. And so is the argument that when I go to look at this item on Amazon, they should just show me $58.49 for the item and not show me what the tax amount is that they're having to collect on behalf of the government? No. In fact, as people have already said in the group today, as I said yesterday on X, I think they should even go further on this. Absolutely, they should show the tariff. In fact, if there already is a tariff on this good that I'm trying to purchase, which there might be, that should be shown right now. The sales tax should be shown. In fact, what I would like to see is the cost of this good, absent all government involvement, what someone would actually charge me. And then I would like to see, well, here's how much it was for regulations. Here's how much it was for fees. Here's how much it was for all the taxes. Here's how much it was for labor or unions or whatever. Any of the things that the government ends up forcing me to pay that increase the cost of my goods, I think it would be a really good thing for everyone to see that. Now, that would be very difficult to do. I understand. It would be very difficult to calculate what that cost would actually be. Many people would end up saying that this is subjective, that these are just estimations, that these right-wing, crazy, woke libertarians or whatever are wanting to put on there, and that number is just totally made up. And then, of course, you would see this number when you go shopping, and then it would be double or triple that much when you went to buy, and that would be a very confusing world to live in. I understand. So how about you just still show me the price, but then you do break down what your estimation is of all those taxes, regulations, and fees in that item. Wouldn't that be better for everyone? Now, before the tariffs and before this thing with Amazon, I bet you a lot of people on the right would have agreed with what I just said. Yeah, you should. This government, it's costing you money every single time you buy a product. Of course, you should break that down. Here's how much your government is costing you every single time you go to buy a product. We should know that. People should know what it's actually costing them. We should stop acting like it doesn't cost us something every time we buy a product from these companies. People should see that when they go to buy. So when they go to vote or when they form their political ideologies, they have more information. Isn't it better to have more information for all the people in the public? Sure it is. Except for when it comes to tariffs, apparently. That's what I've learned. I did want to mention earlier, actually, I accidentally skipped over it because we let out of the 100 days of Trump conversation. One thing, the market was down pretty good this morning, a couple percent, and I just wanted to point out, because I'm a stickler for nuance and numbers and stuff, this is not a defense of Trump or Trump policies or tariff policy or whatever. Maybe it is a little bit. I just think people need all the information. Our GDP number came out as negative. Looks like it's going to be negative 0.3% for the first quarter of 2025. You know what happens if we have another one, another negative? Well, no one really knows. Used to be the case that would be called a recession, but after 2022, I'm not really sure if that's still called a recession. I don't know what the rules are anymore. I'm sure the powers that be will get together and determine, based on objectivity, whether or not that is in fact a recession. And of course, when that does happen, if that does happen, just prepare yourself, because everyone who said that Biden's 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP was not a recession will be saying that this is a recession. And of course, as you know, the exact opposite. Everyone who is saying that obviously the rules are ironclad, etched in stone, that 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP is a recession, will be arguing that this is not a recession. When that happens, we know that that is what's going to happen. And that is super annoying. I just wish that people would stick to it. I said it was a recession when it was Biden, and I'll say it's a recession when it's Trump too. That's my promise here from Good Morning Liberty, is that we are going to be as unbiased and truthful as possible at all times. Now, what's super interesting about this number, though, is that apart from one section really of this GDP, it wasn't that bad. Okay, the consumer spending, it was positive. Investment was positive. Exports are positive. But one of the numbers that goes into GDP is what's called net exports. So your exports minus your imports. And imports really took away from this number a lot this time. Why did that happen? Because so many people have been buying up products before these tariffs kick in. They're trying to get as many of these non-tariffed products as they possibly can, or they were trying to do that before any of the tariffs kicked in, trying to get as many as they possibly can so they can sell those cheaper goods. And so they can store up some of this. Maybe they even think there's going to be shortages and stuff. I'm seeing a lot of people starting to talk about shortages right now, decreases in shipping and stuff like that. And I'll tell you, before the shortages we got during the COVID pandemic and during that inflation and all that, before we got those shortages, there were people talking about it about 5-6 weeks beforehand. And I didn't really pay that much attention to them. Right now, people are saying that we're about 5 weeks out from seeing shortages on shelves, shortages in supplies. But anyhow, essentially what caused this number to be negative was that so many people were importing foreign products before the tariffs kicked in that it caused a very big, very negative number on net exports, which takes away from the GDP and everything else. The other thing that took away from it was that government spending was down. And it actually took away from the GDP number. This is something that the Trump administration has actually argued should not be included in GDP, and I actually agree with them. I don't think it should be in GDP. I don't think the government taking money from the productive side of the economy, either from workers or from businesses or whatever, doesn't matter, we all pay it. Whatever way they take that money away, or they borrow it and then we got to pay it back later, or they print it so it's fake, and then spending that money out in the economy should count as GDP. I don't think fake money should count, and I don't think stealing money from the productive side of the economy and then putting it back into the economy in a less productive way should count as GDP. But regardless, it does. That government spending counts towards GDP. And this time it was actually negative compared to the previous quarter. And so that actually caused a decrease in the GDP as well. That's a good decrease. If that's where the decrease in GDP comes from, hey, that's totally good. I don't think we're going to see the same negative number next time around. And so I don't know that we'll get that recession number because the import number was massive this time. I believe the import number increased 50% year over year. So it increased by half year over year, which was a gigantic move upwards because so many people are buying up imports. All right, anyhow, that's just wanted to mention that. And then there was something crazy. It's Wednesday right now, so we still got another episode before we do Dumb Bleep of the Week. And I'm just not down with this, folks, but the number was down a couple percent on the stock market this morning-ish, like in the NASDAQ, S&P, stuff like that. And Donald Trump posts out, "This is Biden's stock market, not Trump's. I didn't take over until January 20th. Tariffs will soon start kicking in, and companies are starting to move into the USA in record numbers. Our country will boom, but we have to get rid of the Biden overhang. This will take a while, has nothing to do with tariffs, only that he left us with bad numbers. But when the boom begins, it will be like no other. Be patient." This is absolutely ridiculous. And not only do I think that he is wrong about this, I actually will just say right out in front that he is blatantly lying about this. There's no way that people have not told him, of course, what's happening in the stock market right now has to do with tariffs. The first announcements of Liberation Day coming and the day marked for April 2nd as really when the market started downturning, April 2nd itself, and the week after that, after Liberation Day, is when the market really started tanking very quickly afterwards. Of course, it's related to tariffs. Of course, it is related to tariffs. But now that it has been pretty bad for a bit, now we're down like 10%, something like that, for the S&P 500. Which is fine. That's fine. Now that that's happening, this is Biden's stock market. But unfortunately, the internet remembers things forever. It just does. Like on January 29th of 2024, when he said, "This is the Trump stock market because my polls against Biden are so good that investors are projecting that I will win and that will drive the market up. Everything else is terrible. Watch the Middle East. And record-setting inflation has already taken its toll. Make America great again." So even way back in January of 2024, before the election, and the market was doing really well, it was the Trump stock market. But now that he's actually the president, it's the Biden stock market. That's just ain't going to work. Whoever falls for that, it's just sad. It's just sad that so many people fall for that. And so many people will, because they got to cope. They have to. Last thing I'm going to do is talk about unions here for a second. And it sounds like it could be a conversation about tariffs. In part it is, but I posted about this earlier. No lie with Brian Tyler Cohen. He says UPS announced they will cut 20,000 jobs this year because of the economic conditions under Trump. Now, No Lie with Brian Tyler Cohen just posted a lie, if you can imagine such a thing. I know it'd be super easy to just blame this on tariffs right now. I just said, of course it's the tariffs. Of course it's the tariffs when it comes to the stock market. Unfortunately, in the case of UPS and this thing that Brian Tyler Cohen just posted out from No Lie, UPS said that it wasn't because of the tariffs. They're like, yeah, we already announced this plan. This is a long-term plan that we're doing. We started doing it last year. We announced in January of this year that we were going to be doing it, and that we're doing it right now. And that's what's happening. So I wanted to go to CNN here, where it says UPS is cutting 20,000 jobs. It's not what you think. It says UPS added the decision is unrelated to tariffs and instead due to increased use of technology and a previously announced plan to trim its Amazon business. UPS in January announced a glide down plan to cut its business with Amazon, its largest customer, in half by the middle of 2026. Let's see. UPS CEO said Tuesday that most of the Amazon business that it's giving up is not profitable for us, nor a healthy fit for our network. And what we actually find in here, when you dig through some of the talk about tariffs or the Amazon or whatever the case may be, what we actually found is that they're trying to find a way to cut labor. They really, really need to downsize and cut labor right now. Well, sure, it could be because of tariffs or something like that. That could be the case. But before the tariffs were even announced, before any of these specific policies even came out, and it's even hard now to know what the specific policies are, way back in January of this year, they announced that they wanted to cut their business with Amazon in half beforehand because it wasn't profitable. Most of it wasn't profitable for them. Why would it not be profitable? Well, could be the amount of money they got to pay a UPS driver. That could be one of the things that's leading to this being a problem. Like this story from 2023, we talked about it at the time. It says UPS drivers to make $170,000 in pay and benefits following union win. Now, the Teamsters are very upset about this $20,000 cut, 20,000 worker cut that's happening right now. It says in 2023, the Teamsters and UPS agreed to a 5-year labor contract that included wages that were significantly higher than at non-union delivery companies. Commenting on the job cuts Tuesday, the Teamsters General President Sean O'Brien said the contract requires UPS to create 30,000 Teamster jobs. Now, it doesn't even matter if UPS is having a hard time with profitability. It doesn't matter if they want to cut down the amount of deliveries they're doing or cut down their business with Amazon, who is their largest customer that they're delivering packages for. Doesn't matter. This contract said that UPS has to create 30,000 of these Teamster jobs. Doesn't matter what the economy is. Doesn't matter what's going on. They got to create these 30,000 Teamster jobs. Sean O'Brien said, if UPS wants to continue the downsized corporate management, the Teamsters won't stand in its way. O'Brien said in the news release, but if the company intends to violate our contract or makes any attempt to go after hard-fought, good-paying Teamsters jobs, UPS will be in for a hell of a fight. UPS says that they are going to adhere to the contract. So what could happen here? Teamsters, if they attempt to cut these jobs, or for some reason they can't fulfill these 30,000 Teamsters jobs that they're contractually obligated to provide, they could take them to court. And the government's really good at protecting unions and these union contracts. It reminded me a lot of the situation that happened with Yellow Trucking, which we talked about back around the time that it happened. Now, Yellow Trucking, it seems like the management had made a lot of bad, there was some mismanagementism that happened, okay? But over the course of that mismanagementism, they tried to restructure their company, and they tried to cut some jobs, and they weren't allowed to do that. The union blocked them from doing that. The Teamsters union blocked them from doing that. And then when they were so short on cash, they missed a single pension payment to a pension fund. The pension fund actually ended up extending the deadline for that payment. The Teamsters threatened to strike. It was a big deal at the time, threatening to strike. And it turns out, even though the strike didn't happen, a bunch of Yellow's customers left them and went to other trucking companies. After all, Yellow was competing with a bunch of trucking companies who were not unionized and were actually able to charge cheaper prices. So they ended up losing a ton of business afterwards. And shortly after that, that was sort of the nail in the coffin for them. They ended up filing for bankruptcy. Now, I'm not saying this is going to happen to UPS. It's just wild to see what these unions can do. They can lock you into these contracts where you then can't adjust to any extenuating circumstances that are happening with your business. They don't really care. They'll just make everybody go down with the ship. If you get into a situation where you need to cut jobs, can't do that. You got to renegotiate some of this stuff because you're not as profitable as you used to be. No, we got a contract. Ain't nothing we can do about that. Sorry about it. And so what UPS is doing right now is they're saying, okay, we got this Teamsters contract. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do about that? Well, we're going to cut a ton of other jobs. We got to keep these guys. We got these guys a contract saying we got to pay them, including benefits, like $170K a year, which is a lot. It's a pretty good amount of money. And I don't know how realistic that actual number is or how many people actually end up making that, But they got that contract. They want to get taken to court over it. They're still in pretty good shape right now as a business. They're still profitable and all that. But we got to start restructuring right now. Because we saw what happened. This is just me talking right now. We saw what happened with Yellow. Yellow was in a really, really tough spot. And they tried to restructure. And it was too late. It was too late for them to do that. They didn't have time to fight the union and deal with these strikes and all that. And so what's UPS doing now? They're going to cut jobs. They're going to automate. In fact, in all these press releases and all the news articles about it, they're cutting these jobs. They cut 12,000 last year. They cut 20,000. Just announced this. And they're going to automate these people because they got to be able to pay these drivers all of this money. And the unions, you think they care? You think those people care about it? You're going to protect those people who are going to have some pretty good paying jobs at the expense of tens of thousands of other people. So the reason I wanted to mention this was because everyone was assuming this had to do with tariffs. No doubt there's a small percentage of this that has to do with tariffs, but this is a plan that they had already announced before any of the tariff stuff had happened. The only thing I can find is that they've decided to speed up the process, whereas they were going to be doing it slower throughout the year. They've decided that they got to move pretty quick on this, and it's basically the tariffs that moved up their timeline. So while it's easy for everyone to point out the tariffs, it's not always the tariffs. And that's the thing about having an unbiased, objective look and a point of view at things. I see even people on the right or the Libertarians or whoever, and especially people on the left saying, oh, see, this is all the tariffs. It's not always the tariffs that are causing it. I'm going to tell you when the tariffs are causing the problem, and when I'm especially going to tell you when it's the unions that are causing the problem. I'm not going to let these unions skate by and act like we didn't all predict this when this happens and blame it on something else. This is predicted that they were going to cut jobs because they couldn't afford to pay all these people this much money. We said it, You guys said it. People online said it. And it's happening right now. And we'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we didn't point out when it was happening. And I have to mention that I don't like unions. Just get my bias out there. Right out there with everyone. All right, everyone. That's really all I have for you today. Just a couple news items. Just try and stay nuanced and unbiased out there. Not everything is always so black and white. And as I told the group beforehand, I want to go ahead and do a public service announcement for you. I recently listened to Fear and Loathing in the New Jerusalem from Martyr Maid or Daryl Cooper. It's about 30 hours long, something like that. Then I listened to a supplemental follow-up on that came out about 18 months ago called War All the Time, which is takes on what time period from I think about 49 to 80, from about 1949 to 1982, something like that. You should listen to that if you haven't listened to it. And if you're someone who is super pro-Israel or pro-Zionism, let me just tell you this. I went into it as fairly anti-Zionist, very anti-Zionist. And what I mean by that is the idea that everyone had to move to Israel and push these people that were already there off of their land, and that it was the rightful place for these people, and so therefore they had to go do it. And that Zionist project is what I'm referring to, not Jews in general. I went into a pretty anti-Zionist, and actually, after the first couple episodes, I was less anti-Zionist than I was when I started. He does such a great job of telling stories from both points of view, and what almost seems to be an unbiased 30 hours. Towards the end, it might get, I won't call it biased, but it definitely starts sounding worse for the Zionist, for the pro-Zionist side. I'll just tell you that. It was so nice to learn something, to hear a bit of history that I haven't spent that much time on. And there's always more learning to do. I'm going to listen to this, and then I'm going to listen to it again. I'm going to take notes, and I'm going to look up all of the controversial things that I heard and try to get as much information on them as I possibly can. See, what I think is great about doing this is what I think is great about free speech and about the free flow of information is that you don't just have to listen to someone and decide that they are correct and that there's no way that they could have a biased opinion. They would never lie to you. They would never omit something in order to make one side look better than the other. I think it's good to consume as many sources as you can, and don't let that just completely shape your worldview afterwards. Realize that you probably still have even more learning to do after that. And so it was very good. Very good storytelling, very informational. If you haven't listened to it, you should go listen to it. I'm a little bit embarrassed that I took this long, but when I heard it was that long, I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. But then once I realized I could think of it as a book, well, I listen to books all the time. So once I think of it as an audiobook, well, it was pretty good. You should go listen to it. It might change your life or give you a new perspective on one way or the other. Go do it. Okay, everyone. Back tomorrow with Charlie, and then on Friday, of course, for Dumb Bleep of the Week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Sorry the episodes are not as fun when it's just me sitting here talking. I'll admit it. It's not. It's not as fun for me. It's not as fun for you. Okay, but I do thank you for listening throughout this entire episode if you made it this long. If you liked it, tell a family member, tell a friend, tell the children that they should listen to Good Morning Liberty every single day of the week when they want to, because we've got 1,543 episodes out right now. There's plenty of things to listen to. Roughly 1,500 hours of content for you to listen to. Or you can think about it as a very long audiobook. So there you go. If you do all those things, and I mean all of them, every single one of them, I'll be back here again tomorrow with Charlie. Till then, have a good day and a good morning, Liberty.